neither?
First of all, I should say that I think satire is coterminous with being both human and alive. That if we didn't have the innate capacity to laugh at people who think they're better than us, but who, like us, both defecate and will die, then we would actually go mad with existentialist disgust.
So we need satire.
We need satire. Ever since we first developed kings and gods and things like that, we've needed to have the capacity to be able to laugh at them, and to have that laughter mostly tolerated, which it is mostly tolerated. However, when I look around me at the moment, and what I would certainly describe as the most ludicrous government since the coalition of all the talents of 1806, I look on in mild despair that the satire isn't there, that the visual satire is there. Us cartoonists are having a whale of a time because this is an inherently funny government. Just the circumstances of a coalition are funny. It's like Steptoe and Son. It's like the sort of the meeting of two unmatchable groups. So, the idea of Vince Cable boiling his socks in the corner of the kitchen in number 11 while George Osborne wanders in with a polo mallet. This is inherently funny. And yet, strangely enough, given the fact that the satire boom of the early 60s probably helped create a whole wave of comedy which swept through into Monty Python, from Peter Cook and so on, I think comedy has actually muscled satire out. That there's too much comedy and not enough satire, because you now have stadia filled with people telling really rather feeble jokes, but none of them are actually attacking a government which should be like fish in a barrel. It's
strange, isn't it? Because I sort of assumed that there was a time for warm, fluffy, observational comedy and stadium comedy, as you say, and that time was when everybody was sort of reasonably happy, that the economy was going reasonably well, everything was reasonably fine. And yes, we had protest gigs about the Iraq War and things like that, but generally everybody was relatively placid. And I sort of assumed when the coalition came in that it would see a huge upsurge in political satire, exactly as happened the last time there was a Conservative government. Hasn't happened at all.
And you could have all sorts of conspiracy theories for that. You could say that, the BBC, which has got an utterly noble tradition of encouraging satire, has been so cowed by fear of governments that it won't do anything. Let's see if that gets into the edit. You could say that, this is the best government ever, and so there's nothing to laugh about. But I seriously worry about the fact that David Cameron, who has, if you look at him, got one of the most preposterous walks in the Western world, is the first Prime Minister of my lifetime who is not regularly impersonated on TV. He has a very impersonatable voice because he's a toff trying to sound like he's not a toff. But nobody does him. Nobody. Is it because he's so bland? No, he's not bland. He is an inherently ridiculous figure, like all of them. But nobody does him. And why should this be?
Petronius wrote the Satyricon, turned into a film by Fellini, and additionally considered incredibly scandalous. It's like a sort of parody of the Odyssey, in which some friends go on an adventure around Italy, but with lots more gay sex than the Odyssey has in it, which makes it very scandalous for a very long time. In fact, arch-scarer of horses D.H. Lawrence, no less, said of Petronius, "He startled me at first, but I liked him."
So D.H. Lawrence was a fan, but in order to find out how important Petronius writing was and still is, I talked to Victoria Reimel, Associate Professor of Latin and Latin Literature at the University of Rome. Actual Rome!
Well, he's an incredibly important author. The Satyricon is an incredibly important text because nothing quite like this survives from the Roman world. It's the first substantial novelistic narrative, if indeed it is, we can date it to the Neronian period, and most scholars generally agree that we probably can. And although it does have things in common with other texts, prose fiction, probably later in Greek and Latin, satire of Seneca, it also stands alone, aesthetically speaking. It's written in a mixture of prose and verse, like Seneca's satire, but also meshes together in an exciting, experimental way all kinds of different genres, from historiography to love elegy, mime, epic, fable, philosophy, you name it almost, it's in it. So we get an insight into Roman slang, Roman banter, jokes, toilet habits. We get to hear what a drunk might sound like in Latin. And there's all kinds of other details that are fascinating for